Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're here. And we broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Listen line is 605-477-3249. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli, and live from Australia, Guineith Isaacs. Welcome.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Guineith, it is great to hear your voice. I was thinking about what we're doing, you and I, and we are providing an educational experience discussing survival preparedness from multiple continents. And what we're finding out is that there are a lot of similarities. So if we think we can run and just escape the United States for whatever we don't like about it, if we can't fix it ourselves, we may find that the same thing is in another continent. It could be Europe, it could be Australia, it could be Central America. We have instructors in Canada, and we have instructors in all those locations. And so I really appreciate what you're doing, because as a farmer, you bring a perspective to what is happening that many may not see. And here's an example. Because you're a farmer, you look down, you look at the ground, you look at the conditions, you look at the moisture content in the water, you look at in the moisture content in the ground, the water in the ground. You look at how plants are surviving and growing or thriving. You look at what's right and what's not right. And you see the differences very, very quickly, because you're focused on what is happening as a farmer. I do the same thing. And unfortunately, there are many who are in our class today who do not have farms. And so they don't see the kinds of things that we see. What they're doing, many of them are, they're commuting to work. They're in high-stress environments. And it's like one thing after the next. The boss is saying, hurry up, faster, fewer mistakes, let's keep going, because if you can't do it better, we've got plenty of people waiting for your job. So the pressure is intense upon them, and it's difficult for someone in those circumstances to pay attention because of the time pressure. Get it done faster. And then when the accelerator is lifted from them at the end of the day, it doesn't stop. They take it home with them. Can you identify with what I just mentioned?
I absolutely can. I've never really had a mainstream type of job. I guess you would like to call it an office type job. But what I can see there of what you're saying is that people who do have those types of jobs, they are under a lot of pressure. They have to do what they're told, even if what they're told makes no sense. Okay? If they slowed down and had to think about it, they might think, why am I actually doing this? And if that poor soul might work for somewhere like, for instance, I don't know, child protection or a police department, what their behaviours that they're being told to do, and to just do it might actually be hugely destructive to somebody, you know.
Yes.
It might actually destroy a whole family. But they are getting told, listen, just pull your head in and just do it, you know, and they are acting, I think, in a robotic sense, and they're not going to think about it. But they need to stop and they need to think about it, because if they don't stop and think about it, they're going to do things that are going to open them up for a liability suit into the future, because somebody is going to get really hacked off at them, somebody's going to be harmed by them, and somebody's going to end up suing. If they are a nice, normal person like me.
That might be the least of their problems, being sued. They might get shot.
Well, yeah. You know, I'm not
advocating it. I'm not advocating it. I'm
not advocating it either. But there's a lot of people out here who have firearms, and, you know, if they get hacked off enough at particular people, they might, you know. But it's not going to be me, because, for one thing, I don't own firearms. You know, I just don't. And I'm not inclined that way anyway. I'm more likely to set a team of lawyers onto them.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to shoot people either. However, if I'm attacked or my family's attacked, and it's the only way out, I think that's what I'll be doing. I'm not looking forward to it. Don't want it to happen. Want to avoid it at all costs. I'm not advocating that we take revenge. I'm not saying those things. But what I am saying is that there are people who have probably got their Agent Orange up. They've been put in a box and there's no way out. They've been roughed up just too many times by the system, and they just may lash out. And you know, you see it with these riots, and you wonder why are the people who are rioting, why are they bashing in the windows of stores? What did that store do? Probably not much. Maybe if someone wanted to buy something and didn't have enough money, the store probably said, "Yeah, we can't let you have it because you can't meet the price plus the tax."
Sell stuff, not give it away.
But that's a little different from being pulled over for some traffic infringement and then finding out that you've got a $400 or $500 or $600 outrageous fine coming your way, or you've been arrested or handcuffed and thrown in the back of a cage, a mobile cage, and that has happened. And people have been handcuffed and then rolled around, and I have a feeling that the police may enjoy some of that roughing up people. I wish they wouldn't think that. But, you know, if you watch some of these television portrayals of police, like the Blue Bloods, boy, you see the alleged bad guys being banged up a lot. And you know, it doesn't, eventually they show them as being actually the bad guys. They don't show the blue team roughing up, you know, the wrong people. It's always, they got the right guy. But, you know, you've got to wonder, because the police, I used to think that they had ticket quotas, and I found out that that's really not the case. It's much worse in the United States than a ticket quota. I'm talking about, you know, they call it production. And when the police officers are brought into a room, they talk about, you know, let's talk about production, guys. And, you know, we've got those fancy cars and those fancy automatic weapons that you have, and the shotguns and the tasers. And, you know, it costs money to shoot those tasers, and it costs money for the handcuffs, and it costs money for the radios. And those Dodge Chargers with the Hemi head engines, they're pretty expensive. And so if you want to ride around in that rather than, you know, those old jalopies, production's kind of important. So we don't want those bad guys out there. We don't want those people riding around with broken taillights. So, you know, production. And Pete, you've been so good. You actually won.
Word that they're using in their
they use the word production. Yeah.
Wow.
And
well, you know what? That actually crosses the line into from then being anything remotely associated with law enforcement, and that full-on crosses the line into them actually being highwaymen.
Well, when you say highwaymen, you know, we have in Missouri the highway patrol, but you're talking about highway robbery, aren't you?
That's right.
Well, let me share with you this production thing. We have an instructor at USA Prepares who is a former police officer, a protect and serve type, and he quit. He wouldn't stay on the force because they asked him to rewrite after the fact alleged facts on police reports. I'm talking about taking a police report, modifying that police report, and then entering it into the computer system where it resides. So what I'm saying is the original police report may be different from the police report. The handwritten police report may be different from the police report that's entered into the system. So later on, when that's what we're talking about. So later on, when it comes up,
which is a crime.
Yep, and
they got highwaymen
you're right on track.
And issuing false evidence.
Yeah, and so in court, it could come up, Your Honor, here's what the police report says, which is different from here are the facts.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that goes on. But let me share with you what I learned about the quotas. Now, I really thought that the police had ticket quotas or revenue quotas. Probably not so much in dollars of revenue, but in terms of traffic stops, DUIs, driving under the influence stops, arrests, felony arrests. And it's not a quota. What it is it's worse. Now, what could be worse than a ticket quota, as we might think about it? That would be a ticket contest. A ticket contest. Yes, a ticket contest. And I came up upon a former, well, actually, a blue team member. And I asked him about ticket quota. He said, heck no, we don't have quotas. We can write as many tickets as we want. I can write as many as I want. We got off on a tangent today, but I'd like to continue, Guineith, if that's okay. So we have an instructor here at USA Prepares who is a former cop. And here's what he told us. He told, not just me, he told an assembly of instructors and students that that the way it's presented, it's not presented as, you've got to do this. It's your choice. You don't have to go out and give lots of tickets. But here's what happens. You're told that these nice cars, these nice uniforms, and they cost money. The nice tools that cost money. We want to keep everybody safe. We all want to be able to go home tonight to our family. So you got to do whatever you have to do to be safe, which means in a dangerous situation, shoot them first because you want to go home to your family. And and that old ladies in their vehicles could be they could be terrorists, they could be a threat, they could shoot you. So approach them as if you're going to get shot. I've been told that by multiple police officers.
Really, old ladies in cars.
Yes. Yes. Oh yeah. And here's how it goes. So the nice car, the nice uniform.
I apologize for laughing, but I'm just, oh my gosh. Carry on.
Okay, well, and then it's the work hours. Tom, you haven't done such a good job, and so you go for counseling. If you don't meet the unpublished production, then what happens is you go for counseling, and they talk about, well, how can we help you? How can we help you do a better job out there and protect people? Because it doesn't look like, changing people's tires and helping them on the side of the road get going and, that kind of stuff. That's not what we do. We don't do that. So, we want to make sure that everybody's safe and your production's down. So maybe the answer is we've got you on the wrong shift. Maybe that day shift, that nice day shift in the nice area of town or the city, maybe that's not maybe you're not suited for that. So let's talk about your new assignment. Your new assignment is in the combat zone. That's where you need 2 guns in case the first one misfires. Okay, where there's lots and lots of activity and lots of stress and lots of being put in harm's way. That's probably what you'd like better, Tom. And we certainly can't send that new...
Let's do a graveyard shift while you're at it.
Well, it's the night shift in the combat zone, and we certainly don't want to get that new Dodge Charger, with the Hemi head engine and the mag wheels and the wide tires and the dual exhaust and all that comfort. We can't get that scratched up. You understand, Tom. So we got... Remember that old jalopy we got in the back? The one that,
Crown.
The old Crown Victoria. Yeah, that's the one. We're not going to be able to get it painted for you, and it kind of looks like an eyesore, but that's good because, we want you to blend in with,
doesn't matter
with where we're sending. And then the icing on the cake is that the former friends that you had as a police officer distance themselves because now you are not part of the elite team. You're not part of that friendly contest where you try to out-ticket and out-revenue your buddies, and you can joke around about who wrote the most tickets and who wrote the least. Well, you're ostracized, so you don't go out to grab a bite with those guys. You don't park side by side and chew the fat in your police cars, while you're waiting for that next victim of your speed trap. So you're ostracized. So you lose your friends. You're subjected to the night shift. You're in the combat zone, and
everyone hates you.
You're made, and you're a second-class citizen or a second-class blue team member, and that's what they do. So the pressure is extreme to play along with the house rules, which are really unwritten. But it's production, it's tickets, it's revenue, and it costs money to run the city. And the police, instead of being those who are protecting and serving as a cost center, where it costs money to run the police department, now becomes a profit center. You said it. You said it best. Class, just want to give you a heads up. Tomorrow with Dr. Norman Shealy, we're going to do a special broadcast. Dr. Shealy doesn't know this yet. But we're going to be talking about the Myers cocktail. Myers cocktail. He's been talking about it for years on the air with me. And I decided that I think it is so important to discuss. I'm going to ask him in-depth questions about the Myers cocktail and the benefits. And we're not talking about an alcoholic beverage. We're talking about a cocktail of vitamins and minerals intravenously for serious diseases. And so you're going to want to tell your friends and family about tomorrow's broadcast. And it will probably continue on hour number 1 and hour number 2. That's Wednesday. Dr. Norman Shealy and I will be talking about Myers cocktails, how they're administered, what they do, and how and why they work, and what they're used for, what kinds of diseases. So, special broadcast tomorrow. Please share that with friends and family. I'll make that announcement again at the top of the hour. Guineith, we were talking about robbery, highway robbery, and you used the word highwaymen. And that's one of the reasons why I love broadcasting with you, because your language is so clear. Highwaymen. And let me read the definition of highwaymen. It's a man, typically on horseback, who held up travelers at gunpoint in order to rob them. A man, typically on horseback, who held up travelers at gunpoint in order to rob them. Okay. The only difference is we're not talking about that man being a government employee, and we're not talking about that man being in a uniform. Other than that, a lot of similarities between the highwaymen and what we see today. on the road by the blue team.
Well, I'll tell you what, Vincent. There's a reason why public roads are public roads, even when they pass through private land, okay? And that is, I'll tell you what it is. You are absolutely forbidden, under British common law, from putting a fence or a gate onto a public road, okay? And that's the same in American common law, because obviously American common law is the same basically as British common law. That's where it came from. It came from the Magna Carta. And it came from a document called the Statute of Monopolies, okay? If you want to look what the Statute of Monopolies says, but that basically is the basis for patent law and it's antitrust, okay, in a nutshell. But the reason why you're not allowed to put gates and bars and fences on public roads is this, okay? In old times, I'm talking about hundreds of years ago, big estate owners would actually put a gate and a fence on, a fence along the road with a gate in it to allow the road through, okay? And he would have somebody stationed, one of his employees stationed at that gate, and maybe he wouldn't even have a gate, but that employee of the estate owner, or maybe even the estate owner himself, would be permanently stationed by the side of the road, and if any coach came through, he would step out or ride out into the middle of the road and demand a toll, okay? Or maybe he would just say, stop, we're going to rob you. I forget what the exact phrase was. Stand and deliver, and they were on the estate owner's land, okay, the noble lord or whatever, and he also happened to be the magistrate. Now, do we see a pattern developing here? Basically, it's exactly the same model as what is being used today, okay? That you have public roads that the government is now saying are government roads. And in other words, they are saying that we own this estate. And all of you mugs out there, when you see our guys sitting by the side of the road, when we come out into the middle of the road and said, halt, stand and deliver, you must halt, stand and deliver because, we're also the magistrate and we're going to give you a really, really bad time and you might never get out of my dungeon if you object. Or we might just decide to shoot you on the spot if you object. That's the business model that they are operating under. Now, hundreds of years ago, the British Crown, even before the Americas were, inhabited, the British Crown decided that that was not a very good way to operate things because what happened was that commerce shut down. Absolutely. Nobody could go anywhere and everybody had to stay on their own estates. And these estates were vast. We're talking about thousands and thousands of acres. But nevertheless, each estate was becoming like its own little country. And even if you were a villager on that estate, it was actually dangerous for you to leave your village and actually go anywhere because the highwaymen of his lordship that he employed to go out there and, make sure that all the tolls or whatever taxes, private taxes that he wasn't supposed to impose, but he imposed anyway, that they were paid. And that's why we have this common law principle, okay, of not putting fences and gates and bars across roads. That is why we have antitrust legislation. That is why we have the statute of monopolies. That's why we have the Magna Carta. And these legal principles go back 1,000 years. And it's the same business model that the state was using back then, his lordship, who was also the magistrate, was using back then, as what is being used now. It is exactly the same business model. And it's got nothing to do with law enforcement. It's straight out highway robbery by his lordship, who also happens to be the magistrate.
You know, as you say this, I was thinking about something that you mentioned before. Not exactly this, but it ties to it. Stop, halt, stand, and deliver. And that's happening. But also on a smaller enterprise, a private enterprise, the blue team, aren't they saying halt, lie down, and deliver to women?
Yeah, they are. And you got they're armed, and if you dare raise arms against them, well, that's you're going to get SWAT teamed. That's just a stupid idea, and I would not recommend anybody doing that. Okay, because they've got unlimited thousands of fellow infestants that they can call on.
In the state of Missouri, in the United States, it is against the law to resist arrest. Not only is it against the law to resist arrest, but it's against the law to resist an illegal arrest. So if a cop decides to arrest you illegally and you resist, you can be arrested for resisting an illegal arrest.
Ouch. This is getting into Alice in Wonderland territory, mate. It really is.
I'm being absolutely frank about this. It is illegal to resist an illegal arrest.
I think they got similar laws around here, actually. Because they are a law unto themselves. And actually, I live about 4 kilometres from a location which is locally very well known. It's called Melville's Caves. And the reason why Melville's Caves is called Melville's Caves is a cave system about 4 kilometres up the road. And do you know who used to live in this cave system? Captain Melville. And do you know what Captain Melville did for a living? Have one guess. He was a highwayman. We call them bush rangers in this country. But
bush rangers.
Bush rangers, same thing, highwaymen. Because about 4 kilometres up the road is a major intersection between 2 fairly major roads that have been, by major, I mean 2 lanes sealed, okay? Locally major, if you want to get between one town and another, you pretty well have to use that road. Okay, or you can use the back track where you might, get your vehicle all beat up and dusted and all that. I suppose it doesn't matter if you're in a Crown Victoria, but but you want to use the main road. And it's always been the case. And just down the road, about, maybe 2 or 3 kilometres, probably just over a mile south, there used to be a town, which is now no longer there, which was called Wheeler. That's Wehla. And there used to be 50,000 people living there, which is amazing because now there's absolutely nothing there. But that was the location that Captain Melville chose. And if you look at the location that modern police choose, they tend to choose a corner just outside a major town.
Yeah, I saw one the other day with his radar gun aiming out the window, and he was really serious. I mean, he was trying to get any and everyone he could. I guess he wanted to win the contest. Class Guineith Isaacs is with us, and if you'd like to contact her, you can find her at usaprepares.com, page number 1. Also, you can find her on the instructors tab of usaprepares.com. And she'd be delighted to correspond with you. She has a Facebook page, and it'll link you right to that. Guineith, we're talking about how commerce was drastically reduced or curtailed by landowners putting up fences and having their men stand at the road to rob passers-by. And inadvertently, I think we, our governments, our local governments, our state governments, and even the federal government have engineered something similar to that inadvertently. They just incrementally taxed and added on taxes to the point where taxes in some areas in our neck of the woods, sales tax. Now, I'm not talking about income tax. I'm not talking about property tax. I'm not talking about personal property tax. I'm not talking about road taxes for gasoline. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just talking about sales tax. They have increased sales tax to the point where in many places it's over 8% for the privilege of buying something in that location. Now, for example, in my neck of the woods, we have one of the lowest tax areas in the state of Missouri, and it's less than 6%. It's just a little over 5%, but it's way too much. But just go down the road in any direction, and the taxes increase to 8% or more. And what I'm saying is that inadvertently, I think by the increase in taxes, over time, people have voted with their wallets, and they have created this boom in shopping online. Like, why would you want to shop locally if you could buy it from out of state and have it shipped for a lower cost? And let me give you an example. I just looked up the pair of sneakers that I wear. I happen to wear, have them on right now, New Balance. Not that I think that they're the best, not that I think that they're the worst. It's just kind of in the middle price range. Typically at a store they are $70, 70. You can buy them on sale for $5 less, which is nothing. $5 off is nothing to me, meaning it's just insignificant amount.
Yeah, that's a coffee.
You can buy, I found a pair, I just went to eBay and I found a pair new for $48. Now there aren't many new pairs for $48, there's just one, but it's the same exact model that sells for $70. Now why would anybody pay $70 or on sale for $65 plus over 8% tax when you can have it delivered to your door, the same equivalent item with the same make and model and color and all that for $48?
Yep.
You wouldn't. And that's what you were talking about with how these robbers who set up these toll booths on their property, what they've done to commerce. And so if you look at malls, that's what they've done. The high rent, the high taxes in malls, let's just strip them of their ability to survive. So we've done it.
Yeah. Nobody can make a profit at any sort of conventional retail space unless you own the building. That's the only way if anyone out there's thinking of doing that. And even then you've got a running battle with this mob who thinks that their local government, which in this country is actually treasonous, because under our Constitution there are two levels of government, okay? And there are three branches of the government, okay? The two levels of government under our Constitution are federal and state. The three branches of government are the Crown, that's the, Governor-General's department, and you have the judiciary, which is self-explanatory, okay? And you have the third branch of government, which is not local government. It just escapes me at the moment what that is, but we'll talk about that when we get back.
Yeah, and the question is, are they all in competition with each other for revenue? Because the courts are.
I think they probably are.
Yeah, hey, and when we come back, I'd love to ask you about the Queen. What does the Queen do? What does royalty do?
Yep.
And why are they held in such high regard? I'd love to know. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Class, I have a personal favor to ask of you. If you're inclined to pray, would you consider including in your prayers some students and instructors who are having a rough go of it medically? They are Laura, John, Mary, Joyce, Mike, Steve, Stephen, and if you'd like to add one more, that would be me. I appreciate that. And we'll keep you updated as to what's happening as we progress. With us this hour is Guineith Isaacs, and I asked Guineith a question that I'd love to have answered, and that is, what's the Queen do? What does royalty do? Why are they held in such high regard? And Guineith, let me share this brief introduction to this. I have a friend who lives in England, and I've seen him on occasions. He comes to a convention that I attend, and so I've asked him, tell me about the Queen. What does she do? And he says, well, she's the Queen. And I said, what is she?
Well, I'll tell you what, I would love to answer that question, because, you know,
okay, well,
yeah, I'll carry on. No.
So that's as far as I've been able to get with him. So what does she do? Well, she's the Queen. Okay, but what does she do? Well, she's the Queen. Okay. So I don't know what level of programming it takes to get to that point, but what does, tell us about the Queen. And royalty. What are your thoughts?
Okay. I've got some disclosure here, because our family are actually, old friends of the royal family, being that my grandma, whose name was Ethel Crawford, she actually was personal friends with the Queen Mother, okay? This is very, very easy to check, okay? Anyone, and actually her cousin, her first cousin, was the royal nanny, was actually Her Majesty's nanny when Her Majesty was a little girl, okay? So I'll just have to throw that out there, which makes me biased, okay? And my grandfather, that was my grandmother's husband, was one of the royal guards in Buckingham Palace. He used to ride a big black horse. He used to wear a big brass helmet with a ponytail coming out the top. I'm sure you know what, in a nice fancy red jacket. And his uncle was His Majesty's Chief of Horse, okay? And his name, my grandfather's uncle's name was William Long, okay? All of this is historically verifiable. And Vincent, you know, I've said this before, Guineith Isaacs is a nom de plume, okay? My true family surname is Carter. That is Bonham Carter, okay? So I'm one of the blue bloods. That's why I seceded and declared myself a princess. What does the Queen do? Her primary function is to defend the Magna Carta. That is her primary function, is to uphold the British common law. And in the past history, and actually, she has done a moderately good job of it. That's probably, the common law is generally respected throughout the Commonwealth. Okay, after, how long has she been on the throne? After 60 years, British common law is generally respected throughout the Commonwealth, which means that she has accomplished her mission of upholding the Magna Carta and British common law. If she does nothing else other than defend the Magna Carta and the British common law, then she's fulfilled her duty. Okay? Anything else that she chooses to do, other than, on top of that, as long as it does not conflict with the Magna Carta and British common law, primarily the Statute of Monopolies and the King James Version of the Holy Bible. If she wants to do charitable work for whatever, well, she's allowed to do that as well. But that's her primary function, okay? And she's not allowed to do whatever she wants. And her other major role is that she is the head on this earth of the Church of England, okay? Now, what that means is that she is second in command to Jesus Christ and responsible for the spiritual welfare of the Commonwealth peoples, okay? Now, regarding the whole pedophile thing, that has to be mentioned here. Her husband, I would not trust as far as I could throw him, okay? His relative, Lord Mountbatten, was basically assassinated because he was interfering with little Irish boys, okay, and he was making an annual holiday of it. And so certain people who would call themselves members of the Republican Party, who happened to live in Ireland, decided that it was not okay for members of the British royal family to come across to Ireland and molest boys once a year. And so they decided to do something about it. And that's history. The other thing that he did was he tried to cheat the Irish on a gun deal. And you don't cheat the Irish on a gun deal, okay? And that was his stock and trade. Lord Mountbatten was an arms dealer. That's what he did. That's how he made his money. But, he brought it on himself, what happened to Mountbatten. But Prince Philip, I would fully believe what I'm hearing about Prince Philip and Prince Charles. The guy, gloom and well, is proud of the fact that his ancestor is Count Dracula, publicly stated, and he's actually gone out and bought Dracula's castle, Prince Charles. Other members of the royal family, I think that they're a mixed bunch, okay? The Queen Mum was a lovely lady. Her Majesty, I think, tries to do her best to, fulfill in a hugely difficult job of, trying to actually restrain the influence that the globalists have on her own little patch of soil. Because, and that has had to, she's had to negotiate with them. She's had to meet with them, and I would say that she's just about had to become one of them in order to protect Britain's common law interests and the Commonwealth's common law interests. But I think that if there was no royalty, that we would basically have, if any of you have read 1984, we would have an Ingsoc world right now, okay? And we just about have it, but, there's still a lot of freedom that we as, English-speaking people still have. And largely that's because of the influence of the Crown restraining the globalists, the other branches of the globalists, from just doing what they darn well please. And yes, the British Crown is a branch of the globalists. The globalists are not a monolithic structure. There's different branches, and they fight each other. They fight each other viciously. They sometimes assassinate each other. But one branch of the globalists that I'm even more, that I'm absolutely, I really do not want them to have any power or authority whatsoever, is the international communists. And the British Crown is a major thorn in the side to the international communists just coming in and doing what they want. because the British Crown fully understands what danger the international communists are, because George VII, who was the king at the turn of the 20th century, his first or second cousin was a fellow by the name of Nicholas Romanov, who happened to be the Tsar of Russia. And we all know what the communists did to the Tsar of Russia. They got him, they got his whole family, they lined him up against a wall, and they shot them in a cellar. They got their bodies, they dragged them up into a forest and buried them, and then they got started on the rest of the country. And I can tell you for sure that Her Majesty is fully aware of this, and that she walks a fine line, because if she doesn't uphold the British common law and look after the spiritual welfare of the Commonwealth people, the jihadis and the communists are going to come in, and they are going to absolutely destroy the place, and they're going to kill millions of people. That's the function of the British Crown.
Gwyneth, when we come back, yes, when we come back, can you share with us, are there rules for marriage within the Crown? Can anybody marry anybody he or she chooses, or are there restrictions? Class Gwyneth Isaacs with us. If you'd like to contact her, her information is on the website usaprepares.com, usaprepares.com. Special broadcast tomorrow with Dr. Norman Shealy. He doesn't know it yet, but I'd like to talk with him about the Myers cocktail, MYERS cocktail. And there's a theoretical basis for this intravenous nutrient therapy. And I'd like to do an in-depth discussion about what it is, how it works, why he recommends it, and the successes that he has seen with the Myers cocktail. It's a vitamin mineral supplement, intravenously taken, and you'll learn about it in depth from a man who has studied this for years, and something that he offers as a therapy. So I'm going to be meeting with him today. I'll be sharing that information with him today, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. Gwyneth, we're talking about the Crown. Are there rules for marriage? Can anyone within the Crown marry anyone he or she chooses?
Well, as long as they are not divorced, okay? There's a big taboo against that, okay? As long as they are not an F1 relative, okay? It's preferred for them to marry other blue bloods, okay? But the marriage will be recognized if they marry somebody who is not from the blue blood bloodline. Now, that is a specific genetic, okay? The blue bloods trace their ancestry back to a fellow called Ashkenaz, who was the grandson of Noah, okay? He was the son of Japheth, and many of the Ashkenazim married into the Jews. Not all of them did, okay? Now, my branch of the family, there are rather a lot of Jewish ancestors in our family, but I'm not a Jew. And I'm a Christian. I really love the Jewish people. But it's like this. As an example, my ancestor, his name was called John Bonham Carter, okay? And he went to India. He came back with an Indian bride. The rest of the family, they recognized the marriage, but they frosted him out, basically. And the family story goes that they moved to Australia because the climate was better. Now, apparently this Indian lady was an absolutely lovely lady, and, she was a Christian lady. She had been raised in a mission from when she was a little baby, but they thought that it was better for her to marry a British soldier, because if she had married an Indian, she would always be an outcast, literally, because she was half-caste, because her father was British, okay? And we think that the circumstances of her conception were probably not good, meaning that her mother probably didn't have much of a choice in the matter. But that's how that branch of the family came out to Australia. Now, that's only 5 generations ago. If you go to the Bonham Carters, who currently inhabit the big house at North Hants, okay, I'm talking about Helena Bonham Carter's grandparents, okay, then they don't really recognise us. But that doesn't change the fact that we are actually related to them. And if you ask them what happened to John Carter, they say, oh, he never had any children. Well, that's not true either. He absolutely did.
When we come back, can you talk about, you mentioned not being F1 relatives and not being divorced. Guineith Isaacs is with us. Guineith, the Prince of Wales is the Queen's eldest son, first in line to the throne. And he married, in 1981, he married Lady Diana
Princess
Spencer.
Diana. Yeah, he became Princess Diana. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the couple had 2 sons, William and Harry, but they separated. Their marriage was dissolved in 1996. And in 1997, the princess was killed in a car crash in Paris, many believe under suspicious circumstances. Many believe she was murdered.
I tend to hold to that theory myself. I think she was murdered.
Okay. And then, but here's the final point. Prince Charles married Camilla Parker Bowles in 2005. Now, I believe you said that you couldn't, or a person in the crown could not marry someone who was divorced, and I believe she was. Is that correct?
Yeah, she was. But you see, the thing is, they were never going to produce an heir to the throne, okay? The problem, like I say, it's not that it's illegal, okay? It's just that there's moral and ethical problems. But considering Prince Charles's other sins that have come to the fore since then, I think the fact that he's married a divorcee is the least of his worries when he gets to eternity, okay? Like I've said, primarily the fact that he's very proud of the fact that Count Dracula is his ancestor. And we are talking about one of the most brutal, bloodthirsty, archetypically vicious nobles on the history of the earth. And that he is actually proud of the fact that this man's his ancestor, and excuse me, and that he's actually gone and bought his castle and lives there for a significant proportion of the year. Now, if that was my child, and God forbid, that would be absolutely awful to have a child like that. For that child then to come to me and say, Mum, I know it's against the rules, but I'm in love with this lady here that I've been in love with for the last, he was actually in love with her back in the 1970s. He wanted to marry her back in the 1970s, and the Queen flat out refused. She said no. and they had to back off. And I'm really glad that the Queen put her foot down back then and absolutely refused to allow them to get married back then, because I shudder to think the brood that they would have produced, you know. It's not just that Camilla is divorced. I think that her husband probably had a good reason for divorcing her, because she's evil. She's a Rottweiler. Princess Diana was right when he called her when she called Camilla the Rottweiler. I think that she actually had a lot of perception there. That woman, I shudder to think. And at least they're never going to have children. Okay? But I can sort of imagine the Queen standing there, rolling her eyes, saying, oh, whatever. Basically, I don't think she would use that word, but you or I might, you know. If we were in her situation. So it's not that it was illegal, it's just that it would have been a really bad idea for this particular genetic of Camilla and Charles to be propagated. And once that bloodline is produced, it cannot be extinguished except by God himself. She's evil, and that's what when blue bloods arrange their marriage, they choose the spouse with a view to what sort of children will be produced, okay? They breed themselves as carefully as they breed their horses and their dogs, okay? And that was the problem back in the day, back in the 1970s, when the Queen was so firmly opposed to Charles and Camilla marrying. And I think that the Queen actually made the right decision back then. And she brought in Diana, who is actually, you know, from royal bloodlines herself, okay? She's actually something like the second cousin of Winston Churchill. I forget what the exact relationship is, but Winston Churchill's name was Winston Spencer Churchill. He was related to the Spencers. And, you know, so she had some pretty high connections. She wasn't just a kindergarten teacher, like it was said in the press. And I'm sure if you looked into Kate Middleton's history, then you would find that she was probably a bit better born than what is generally expressed publicly. And I think, you know, I really pray to God that Charles never becomes the king. I think that it will be a bad day for the whole Commonwealth if Charles ever becomes the king, because any man who is actually proud of the fact that Dracula is his ancestor and has gone out and bought his castle, I shudder to think what he would do to the crown, to the whole government system. You know, Vlad Dracul was brutal in the extreme, and his relative Elizabeth Bathory was just as bad, and she, in that same era, was fond of bathing in the blood of young virgins. And, you know, we can take that whatever way we want, can't we, Vincent?
Yes.
It's disgusting.
You know, Guineith, you're a wealth of information, and I really love broadcasting with you. I really do. None of what we've talked about for the last hour, 45 minutes, was something that we were going to talk about. It just happened.
Absolutely wasn't. We were going to talk about the kids' schooling.
Let's talk about what we refer to as the government public training camps.
Yeah, it's that's what we were going to talk about. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now I have a son and I have two sons, actually. The oldest son is 16 years old, okay? I'm a widow. My husband died when my younger son was just 3 months old, okay? And we have been battling, not so much, well, kind of financially, but more with people who call themselves government who want to destroy us since my children were babies. And now I look at them and they're adolescents. And you know something? I've got a love-hate relationship with the school, but it's mostly, you know, if I could have them out of the school system, then I probably would. And for many years I have had them out of the school system, okay? Now my children both have IQs which are north of 135, okay? And do you know what? The school system, if Connor could, that's my older boy, if he could leave school now, at the age of 16, he would. Absolutely. He would leave tomorrow. But the government here has tied school attendance to receiving a particular government check, okay? And if the attendance falls below about 80%, then you lose your government check. Now, it's not that I'm a welfare head. I also work. But we live 18 kilometres out of town and I don't have a motor vehicle because of the harassment from the blue team, okay? And we all need some income to live, all right? Now, they are doing the most ridiculous things at the school. They recently spent a 2-hour lesson teaching these adolescents of about the age of, 15, 16, 17, how to use a ladder. 2 hours on how to use a ladder. Can you believe that? Do you know how long it takes to teach a kid how to use a ladder?
Oh, I'd say about 5 minutes.
About 5 or 10 minutes.
Yes.
The dumb ones might need the extra 5 minutes. But my son Connor has been climbing ladders since he was 12 months old. And that, I didn't know, that was, I sent him out the backyard to play with his brothers. I go out there the next minute, he's 10 or 12 feet up a ladder. And I had to climb up the ladder and get him down, obviously, because you can't have a 12-month-old baby 12 feet up a ladder. But he figured out what ladders were for very early on. And he's got absolutely no fear of heights, and he uses them quite safely. He does not need 2 hours to learn how to use a ladder.
So I believe what you're saying is we are wasting time in school and we're not concentrating on the important things. Let's talk more about that. And let's talk about... Yeah, that's right. And let's talk about food in the last segment that we've got coming up. Guineith Isaacs. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs, when I was a public school teacher back in the 1990s, I went to the superintendent of schools and I said, why don't we rewrite the curriculum for high school? Reading, writing, arithmetic, history, science, math, the basics. And then principles of business, principles of insurance, principles of banking, ethics.
How fiat money works, little things like this.
Right. That's what I proposed, and he kind of chuckled, and he said, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we're doing things like we're teaching specific history month. We have Black History Month, and I have a problem with Black History Month as I would have a problem with White History Month or any other specific history month. How about just history? How about learning history? And so I had a problem with that, and it seems like we've lost our way, and we are teaching to the lowest common denominator. So instead of segregating our children in classes based on their ability to learn, we are segregating them by how many days they've been on the planet. So, all children of the same age are in the same class. I have a problem with that. My father had a problem with that, and he, in his elementary school when he was a principal, back in the early 1960s, decided that he would ungrade his school. And he had the first school system that had no grades. You were in a class with your peers educationally, not based on how long you've been on the planet. And that survived until he moved on to his next upwardly mobile position, which was, at a larger school, and then they disbanded that particular ungraded strategy. So let's talk about, are you saying that we waste too much time in school?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, we waste time doing the wrong things, okay? Now, I suspect he has had an assessment and they said no, but I suspect that my oldest son is probably dyslexic, okay? Because he is when he's older, if he ever chose an academic path, he would probably make a really, really good lawyer because he will argue the point and his logic is actually pretty good, but he's got no interest whatsoever in academia. So he'll probably end up being some type of engineer, okay, or some type of tradesman. But he will have a really, really prosperous business because, like I say, logic and reason is up there. What is not up there is the spelling, And,
sounds like you're talking about me. It sounds like you're talking about me. I was highly dyslexic. In elementary school, they never thought I'd make it through. High school, they never thought I'd make it through, nor to college. And same thing at college. They thought I'd never make it, and on to my master's. And I was tapped by a law firm to join their firm and go to law school, which I did not do. It's very interesting, and I have trouble spelling as well. So,
And but like I say, he had a maths test at his school, which he told me about, okay? And this maths test consisted of 2 decimal conversions, okay? That means sort of like they had to, change so many meters into so many millimeters or something like that.
That's pretty easy. Yep.
And I said, that's nice, son. What did you... And I said, how long were you allocated for this test? And he said, 2 hours. And I said, oh, well, what did you do for the other hour, 59 minutes and 40 seconds?
Well, it sounds like you're describing... It sounds like you're describing what's going on here. Can we get to food really quickly?
Going on all over the world?
Yeah. 45 seconds to talk about food. 45 seconds. Let's talk about food.
Food. You've got to find out what grows natively where you are, okay? And figure out how you can use it as a food resource, okay? That's what you've absolutely got to do.
And avoid the food banks.
And avoid the food banks. Absolutely.
Gwyneth,
they're full of so much high fructose corn syrup.
Yep. We're out of time. Gwyneth, I'll see you 2 hours next Tuesday. Thank you so much for all your effort in educating us. I really appreciate it. Gwyneth Isaacs. Link on the website, usaprepares.com.